Hi everyone, and welcome to Bad Code Can Make Great Games Too. Just a small introduction about myself. I'm Johnson. I'm a co-organizer for Game Dev Happy Hour, which is a game development community based here in Hong Kong since around 2017, but unofficially, we've been around since 2015. By day, I'm a community manager, so that means interacting with players on Discord, social media, whether they have support they need for issues with the game, whether it's for driving engagement with events. That's generally things that community managers do, in case you don't know. On the side, I usually play a producer for smaller projects, so that's managing schedules for meetings, handling communication between team members, whether between the artists, programmer, designers, blah, 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 blah. So if it isn't already obvious by now, I'm a programmer imposter. Absolutely terrible at programming, let me tell you that for sure. So why do I want to talk about code? Well, before I started programming in general or trying to program, you meet a lot of programmers in these parts and you hear them talk about, elegant code, which language is better, which engine is better, how do you approach the philosophy of your design or programming of the game. And that scared so much for me, especially before I began. So before I answer the question on why does it matter, why doesn't it matter, let's talk about programming in general or coding applications. Generally you can think of banks app, account systems, or even social media accounts. And the way I think about it is that it's supposed to give you information or alert you to something. So something that's really important is that when you do account system and someone types in the password, enters a password, you cannot just fudge a number and say, hey, this one letter, it doesn't matter. No, it has to matter. You make a event app, you have to make sure the time is correct. If you off an hour, then that's not good. And with this, there's a sense of almost perfectionist, I imagine, especially before I began programming. And so the way I boil down the general uses or the general structure or goal of coding is that it aims to reliably and efficiently provide accurate results. Once again, based on my uninformed perspectives. Now, this is not to say that games are unreliable, inefficient, and not accurate, despite what people online may say about games these days. At the earliest onset of video games, they follow the same goals. So for Super Mario Brothers, I think this topic has been talked to death, but the hardware itself was so limited that sprites were reused and just simply, changed to a different color just so they can be, interpreted in a different way or used as a different asset in games. So Super Mario Brothers was released in 1985 for the NES, and another great example is Pokemon, which was originally released for the Game Boy in 1996. On the console, in a handheld console at the time, it only had 4 megahertz of CPU, 8 kilobytes of RAM, 4 pixel colors, and 4 audio channels. And yet, it has filled so many of our millennial gamer memories, such depth of RPG and such. And so, to me, the biggest difference between general coding and coding for games is that we do not provide that information in an accurate way, but we provide information in an entertaining way. So let's move on to a little bit more modern. These are the nominations for Game of the Year for this year from the Game Awards. And among them, you might know of Balatro, which is made by Local Funk, published by PlayStack. And you think, compared to Astrobot, Black Myth Wukong, Elden Ring, Final Fantasy, Metaphor Refantasio, those are all AAA teams, massive teams full of professionals in their expertise, and especially programming. And yet, Balatro, made by one person, he revealed recently that there's someone, not him, but I believe a player managed to find the coding and the execution. Anyways, this is part of the source file. And for those who don't know programming, the ridiculousness of the simplicity of this, Game of the Year nominated game is this. So to explain it in a bit more layman terms, it's a bit more of equivalent of the drop-down menu for when you select birth, birth of year for your documents. It's like saying in the programming, if someone puts in or selects 1983, please enter 1983 into the database. If someone puts in 1984, please put 1984 into the database. And it continues on and on and on. And I think that this game can match up in terms of, how much enjoyment people play the game out of, and to end up in a nomination for the Game of the Year awards is incredible. So let's talk about one of my own projects. So this is Snake Ventures. You can think of it as Nokia Snake meets an adventure games. So you eat fruits and you increase the length. There are puzzles with buttons based on trying to press down the buttons at the same time. There are NPCs. You have to give them items or find items for them. And I made a dialogue system for this. So this is my first attempt at a dialogue system ever. And just to explain it all, because I know this can be a bit confusing, I basically created two requirements or two variables. One is the requirement for the item for their request. If they have the item, then it'll go to the dialogue. And in the dialogue variable, there's two elements. If they do not have the item, play element 1. If they do have the item, play element 2. Again, two-step system, my first attempt at dialogue system. Now, leaving that behind, we'll return this in a second. I'm sure all of you have heard Undertale. Massive indie game, darling, you know, the pixel art, the narrative, the humor, and it itself also has a dialogue system, as you can see here, Flowey talking. And this has been a piece of code that was found, admittedly compiled from the game, so it might be a bit different, but even this massive indie hit has a dialogue system that is simpler than my own, in which case it doesn't even have a two-step dialogue message. Instead, every dialogue has a number associated with it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And every time it's needed, they just say, please play dialogue 1. Please play dialogue 2. And this switch case has 1,000 cases in it. So such a game that can sell 5 to 10 million copies sold, and also possibly considered one of the greatest indie games of our time, is more simpler than my first attempt at making a dialogue system. Now, it only goes to show that we sell games and not code. People don't look at the code, they play the game. And I think that's very important to remember, especially when you're a programmer or even your first time programming. Don't worry about quality of the code. Just go in, make it. If it works, it works. Now to go into something a bit more recent, there was the recent Fallout show. Anyone who's watched it has known it's received well. People love it. Players love it. And it's part of the Fallout series. So again, I'm sure many of you know, it's a well-known post-apocalyptic open-world RPG-ish series. And Fallout 3, which came out in 2008, features one of the it's one of the entries in this series, and very much the same. You go scavenging this open post-apocalyptic world, finding items, talking to people. It's very much you walking around. There is the power suit. Unfortunately, I forgot the name, but generally so, it's that thing. Now, why do I bring this up? And it's because some not DLCs, some expansions later, it features this moment. It works? Yes. Come on. Oh no. Oh, is the internet going bad? No, great. It's fine. Which is, I believe, if I remember correctly in the situation, the context, the player goes underneath the presidential, or what used to be the presidential White House, and there be the train. Now, for a lot of us, this isn't significant, but because you just play the game, so, oh, this is really cool. That's the most thing. But 7 years later, we find out the truth. And actually, the train was not a train, but an NPC, which the train model was attached to their head. And the NPC just runs at an incredible speed to mimic that of a train. And the amazing thing is, we didn't find out this until there was mod tools and someone pulled it out. And generally speaking, if such a large company, Bethesda, I believe, who developed it at the time, did not take the time to make a specialized vehicle system, and instead they just say, just take an NPC, stick a train on it, and make it go fast, and that's good enough for us. If that's good enough for them, then don't worry about what you're going to do, especially as an indie developer. And generally speaking, unique content in terms of moments that doesn't follow a form or general system is quite common. And don't feel like you need to build a system to encapsulate every moment and it's going to work well. It's okay to make a busted up system that kind of only works, but it works in the way you understand and you can design around it. So like even take, for example, Viewfinder from 2023. Even systems like X, Y, and Z, the way we walk and move forward. This game takes that where you take a single 2D photo and by laying it in the 3D space, you can drastically change the way the 2D images become 3D objects or planes for you to walk on. Or even Superliminal, which came out in 2019, which plays a lot more with perspective, where items can change size depending how you look at them or the way they integrate with the world. And so all this just comes to the point that, hey, don't worry about the quality of your code. All that matters is that game. So if you ever had any hesitancy to start programming or start learning, just learn, just try it. If it works, that's it. All right, thank you very much.